Hi, it's Adam. Before we get to this quote mini-sode end quote of the podcast, I just wanted to say that I talk at the beginning of this about some card power levels polls, and as this podcast is being released, which is hopefully Monday or Tuesday, November 23rd, 24th of 2020, there is a power levels poll currently open. I'm going to link it in the show notes and description of this video. And I encourage you to go and put in your opinions for at least the Menagerie cards. But of course, you can rate all the cards if you would like to do that. Those will be collected about a week from today, so around November 30th of 2020. I'm going to collect those. I'm going to write up a blog post. So if you want your voice to be heard on that, go ahead and check it out and input what you think are the power levels 0 through 10 of the Menagerie cards, and then we can look at data and numbers and data are fun. Other than that, I'm going to publish this now. Probably sometime after that post is made, there will be the next episode of the podcast, which is going to be probably revisiting these Menagerie card power levels, and I'll probably have a co-host at that time. But anyway, hope you like the mini-sode, and yeah, go do the power levels thing.
Well, the haters gonna hate, and the faker's gonna fake, baby. I'm just gonna make, making luck, a Dominion podcast.
Welcome to Making Luck, a Dominion podcast. I'm Adam, and this episode is going to be just me. It is currently March 22nd, 2020. I am allowed to leave my house to go to my non-essential job, to which they haven't allowed me to work remotely. But I imagine that'll be changing pretty soon. By the time you listen to this, maybe I'll be able to do that, maybe not. Hey! But here we are, and the Dominion Menagerie rulebook has just been posted on the website, and so now all of the cards, and more importantly, all of the art has been released for people to see. You can play it online, and it's time for me to give my first impressions of the Dominion Menagerie set. The reason you're seeing this now as opposed to March 22nd, 2020 is because, I did help to playtest this expansion, and as such, Donald X has asked me and other playtesters not to give opinions like this until he says it's okay, so it's probably a couple months after that now. I don't want to spend too long on this, other than to say just a couple of things before I get started. First of all, this is a mini-sode, mini maybe in quotation marks, depending on how long this has gone. There's going to be no kingdom analysis at the start and end, and the next episode is very likely to be these takes revisited, and I'll probably have a co-host, Wandering Winder, with me on that episode, so we can both talk about how our opinions have changed, what ratings maybe or opinions that we have that could have changed after a couple months of playing with the cards. And then we'll also probably compare our opinions to what the community's opinions are. There's the first impressions poll out now, but the results aren't in. But by the time that episode drops, it'll probably be the next poll on card power levels will be done. We'll be able to have a good idea of what the community thought first, how those opinions have changed. We can talk about all of that next episode. So without any more fuss, I guess more fuss. I guess the other thing I need to say is that I playtested this expansion about as much as I playtested Nocturne, which was significantly less than the other three I've been involved with, Adventures, Empires, Renaissance. What happened with this and Nocturne is I ended up playtesting a pretty good amount towards the start, back when cards were very different than they are now. And the last couple of months of the expansion, I just really wasn't able to do anything. This is my life as a parent. This is my life as a podcast host. It was really tough to find IRL people to play with, so I just didn't really get many games in with physical cards. So with that said, there are a lot of these cards that I've just straight up never seen before or never played with before, and there are a lot of cards that have changed significantly since I played with them. These takes are going to be hotter than usual. And just keep that in mind. I am really definitely not a source of compelling information on a card by default, unless I say otherwise. Like, I've definitely played with this card. It didn't change for a long time, something like that. All right, let's get going. First card is Black Cat. It's a 2-cost action attack reaction. It says plus 2 cards, and then it says if it isn't your turn, each other player gains a curse. It's really hard to play action cards when it's not your turn, but the reaction portion is the attack portion. When another player gains a victory card, you may play this from your hand. So the idea is, it's just plus 2 cards on my turn. It doesn't do anything else. But if it's the opponent's turn and they buy a province or something, then I can play a Black Cat from my hand if I have it. That means I get the 2 cards, don't have to spend an action on my turn to do it, since you don't need an action to play it. The reaction part of this allows you to play the card, and then they also get a purple. So this is really great if you can use the reaction, and it's just plus 2 cards if you can. I gave this card a 6 out of 10. Preliminary results and a little bit of discussion shows a lot of people giving this card a lot lower. Like, people are giving this a 2 or a 3. I think that's nuts. Like, I think people are seeing that they can't use the reaction, and they're like, oh, this reaction is hard to do, and so this card is blank when you don't get to use the reaction. And that's not the case. Like, plus 2 cards for $2 is great. Like, that's like a 4 out of 10 if it did absolutely nothing else. And the reaction ability on this guy is fantastic. Giving out curses is really, really good. And I know it's not giving out curses early, and so that's why I didn't give it a higher number, right? But giving out curses late is still really good. I mean, it's points, first of all. You're making their point cards worth less if you're able to do this. You can also potentially chain them. So if you get good Black Cat density, they can be very afraid to buy a victory card, because they might get spammed with like 4 curses or something, and then all of a sudden you have a huge hand. You only need to have 1 to start, and if you draw into more Black Cats, you can play them. I think the threat of that is very significant, even if it's late towards the game. That doesn't mean go all in on it, but it is a junking attack, and it is effectively a lab when you get that. The upside is there, and people buy victory cards in like a lot of games. So I do think this is a 6 out of 10. This is one of the lower numbers that I give junking attacks, but it's something that's not really in your control. You can't just shove curses in their deck right away, and you can't do it fast. So that's a downside. I think this is a really cool card. It's a really fun card. It's different. I'm really glad that this card exists. I like it a lot. And also it has a cat on it, so like my wife really likes it too. She loves cats, in case you didn't know. Let's move on. Slay. Slay is a 2-cost action reaction. It says gain 2 horses. And then the other text says, when you gain a card, you may discard this to put that card into your hand or onto your deck. So that's the reaction bit. Full disclosure, when I played with Slay, the reaction part was absolutely nutty. You didn't have to discard this card to put it in your hand. Whew, that is broken. That would have been 10 out of 10, like absolutely nuts. This is not that card anymore, and it's very possible. I gave this a 6 out of 10. It's very possible my rating is inflated because of that, because I remember this card being absolutely busted. On the other hand, gain 2 horses is not a bad ability. It's certainly not as good as gain 2 cards, but it's pretty decent. In the right kind of deck, it could potentially be even better. But when the gain to hand thing is actually quite good. You have to remember that if you have like gainers or some way to gain a card where you can still actually play it on your turn, that's really, really good. And you don't have to actually take an action to play this card when you get to use that ability. So you can just shove a Slay in your deck on a $2 or a $3 buy. If you don't have the action to play it, sadness. But it works with terminal gainers is what I'm trying to say. So like if I'm able to gain something in the middle of my turn, I get to play it right away. I didn't have to use an action to do this Slay bit. So I can just workshop a silver, and then the Slay is now a silver. Or if you don't draw the Slay with your gainer or whatever, like that's fine. You can just play it and get 2 horses. That's okay. I don't think this mouse cursor is part of the image. I don't know what's up with that. I think wherever I got this Slay image, there's anyway. Moving on, supplies. Supplies is a 2-cost treasure, gives you $1, and then it says when you play this, gain a horse onto your deck. I gave this a 4 out of 10. Let me explain something. Supplies used to not top deck the horse, and I played with the supplies, but like not nearly as much as the old one. I went on a crusade to get this card buffed. And so I played a lot of games with the old one, and, you know, there were multiple different versions. This is the one that got published. If this doesn't top deck the horse, this is absolute garbage. I'd be giving it a 1 or a 0. However, it does top deck the horse. I just remember this being really bad, and it's possible my rating is deflated. I don't think that's the case for any of these other cards. They just happen to be like 2-costers, so they're towards the beginning. So the natural comparison here is to Peddler. You get $1, and then you get a horse next turn. So, like, if you play it on one turn, then you had a horse, and then eventually you'll draw your supplies. So if you're drawing your deck, you know, you'll draw the supplies, and that cancels out the extra card that the horse drew you, and then, ooh, it's kind of like a Peddler. But it only costs 2! Woo! And it's a treasure. I think for that reason, it is worse than Peddler, for sure. You really don't want to have to deal with playing it the first time, where Peddler gave you that card action dealy the first time you played it. So this is much slower at making your deck better than Peddler is, and also Peddler frequently costs 0 or maybe 2. So like, but Peddler's a really good card. So being worse than Peddler doesn't mean it's bad. Is this better than Silver? Well, that depends on a lot. Obviously, it depends on how much you care about deck control and how much it hurts you to play this the first time. But you know, Silver is a very good card. And I think in the abstract, without like, oh, I'm drawing my deck and I care so little about draw that I want to do this, but then I care about draw. Like, that all seems pretty arcane to me. So, I mean, this is fine. I gave it a 4, but like, you're buying a copper, and it's important that the first time you play this, it's a copper, and only after that, you know, if you just play this and then next turn you get a horse, and then like, woo, I drew some money I didn't need, like. It really is bad. Like, it is still worse than nothing in that case in a lot of decks that don't draw a whole bunch. So I gave it a 4. I'm not super warm on it, but I mean, I'm glad the card is like this. I don't think it's garbage. I think it's fine for the set. I think it's cool now. It does have its uses, but, you know, those uses really amount to it's a Peddler, and that's pretty cool. A Peddler that can give you a little bit of a reliability boost, and then it has some synergies. It has the standard horse synergies. Like, oh, I can throw in my horse. Woo! Great. Moving on, Camel Train. It's a 3-cost action. It says exile a non-victory card from the supply. It says when you gain this, exile a gold from the supply. So exile is a mat that you have. The mat says when you gain a card, you may discard all copies of it from exile. So the idea is you gain this, and then you've exiled a gold, and then the next time you get a gold, you can discard that gold. Now you can actually use the gold. And you can gain cards in a slow way like this, but you can gain like anything that's good. You can gain like a possession, or you can gain like a fortune or something. You can gain. There's no restriction on what you can gain. So I think the comparison here is to Duplicate. Duplicate is, I mean, it's very different, but you know, it's a gainer, and it kind of doesn't do much when you first draw it, right? Camel Train can get you extra copies of cards, and Duplicate can get you extra copies of cards. I gave Duplicate a 4. I'm giving Camel Train a 4. However, that does not mean they are the same card, and they definitely have different use cases. So yeah, Camel Train is, it has all those Lurker synergies, right? Lurker doesn't care about the cost of what you trash, and you got to play Lurker twice, and it's non-terminal. Here, you just have to find a way to gain that card once, and then you can get a whole bunch of them. So, you know, the Grand Markets and the Potion cards of the world are really happy to have Camel Train around, or, you know, all those spammable cards that are hard to get. Camel Train really likes having those. And hey, you can have a Camel Train if you want to put a gold in your deck, and you know, you want to put multiple golds in your deck, then you can buy one of those golds, or maybe potentially more of those golds, for 3, because you can get your Camel Train, get your gold right away. So it's a neat way of shoving a lot of payload into your deck. It's kind of like Skulk in that way. If you can get the gold right away, then, you know, gold's a really good card if you want to be shoving payload in your deck. So yeah, that's Camel Train. Goat Herd. It's a 3-cost action. It says +1 action. You may trash a card from your hand. +1 card per card the player to your right trashed on their last turn. All right. So first of all, this does not work when the opponent donates. Sorry, because that happens between turns. But, you know, it could potentially draw you a card. There are nice little cases where it can do that, but honestly, I don't see the text there being useful in all of those situations, and it's certainly something that you don't have absolute control over. So I think this card reads pretty closely to +1 action. You may trash a card from your hand. If you get some draw from it, fantastic, but I'm not holding my breath. And I'm certainly not going to not trash cards from my deck because I'm afraid of my opponent drawing some cards with a goat herd. That's just not a thing that I ever plan on doing. With that said, non-terminal trash card, really stinking good, especially when it's from your hand. So I think it's very comparable to Lookout, although, Lookout has its other benefits and downsides. I give it a 6 out of 10. Scrap. It's a 3-cost action. Trash a card from your hand. Choose a different thing per dollar it costs. And then the options are card, action, buy $1, the standard 4 vanilla bonuses, and there's gain a silver and gain a horse. So I gave this card a 6 out of 10. You can try and make comparisons to other cards, and I don't really think it makes sense to do that. Scrap is just kind of it's a really weird, it's a new thing, right? And new things are great for the game. I'm glad this card exists. It likes to trash high value things, but like at the same time, if I'm gonna scrap a gold so I can get card action, dollar buy, and gain a silver and gain a horse, like, I don't know, that gold was pretty good. Maybe the gold is like easy to gain, but like you're also giving up a gold that turn that you could have played. So like, I don't know, it just doesn't have the same oomph as like apprenticing a gold or salvaging a gold or something like that. You're just kind of getting a little bit of everything, and there's not like a situation where you're getting a lot of something that maybe you need a lot of. So like the flexibility here, it isn't going to manifest itself in like, oh, I really need draw, I can use scrap for draw. Well, no, you really can't. Like the +1 card is not draw by itself. If I scrap an estate and make it a cantrip, fantastic, like that's super great, but like that's not draw. That's not what draw is. And you can gain a horse, but you're just giving up cards this turn for a card later, and also it took you 2 cards and you're only getting 1. So like it's not really fantastic. It's just I can trash a card and get the thing that I need. So it's marginal useful in its flexibility. I think it's great at trashing estates, bad at trashing coppers. Wow, look at this hard-hitting insight. But the fact is, like, this is such a good card to open with. It trashes cards, and it gives you a little bit of a boost, and that's just so good in the early game that you're going to find yourself buying this bad boy a lot. So I gave it a 6 out of 10. I could see like a 7 out of 10 for this card. I think it's pretty good. Next up is Sheepdog. Sheepdog, before I get to this card, I want to talk about the art. This was like the first, this was like on the first day of preview. It's one of the first Menagerie art that I saw. And I really don't like the art on this card. When you look closely at it, it's not as bad, but like when I'm looking at this card, like that just looks like a photo of a dog. And like, props to the artist. You drew a dog that looks really realistic. I mean, that takes talent, but like it just, you look at it next to other Dominion cards and it just looks so out of place. And I just wish that it didn't look like a picture of a dog. It looks like a fan card to me, Like, I do these thumbnails for Making Luck. It's like Groundkeeper with a picture of T-Swift in it. And like, yeah, it looks kind of funny and cool. Woo, Groundskeeper, T-Swift's wearing green. And like, she's making a little heart with her hands. And like, but like, that's a fan card. That's a meme. And like, this is a serious card with serious art. And it just doesn't look that way. And I was really disappointed with it. And there's like 1 or 2 other cards in the set where the art is like, really, that's really off theme, and like it just takes me out, and I just don't think it looks good. Anyway, I'll stop whining about the art. Sheepdog, it's a 3-cost action reaction. It says +2 cards, and then the reaction bit is when you gain a card, you may play this from your hand. So I gave this a 5 out of 10. Obviously, it's similar to Black Cat, and then it just gives you +2 cards, and then there's a reaction-y bit that lets you play it for free. Right? And so when you play it for free, you don't have to spend the action to play it. You just get the card, so it acts like a lab at that point. However, while it may be easier to make this reaction happen, because it's something you have control over, gaining a card yourself, I can control that rather than, Black Cat is necessarily something that happens on my opponent's turn. So, like, I can't even ambassador them in a state and then take advantage of it. But, like, it's easier to get this Sheepdog reaction off. But at the same time, like, the impact is just you get that +1 action. So, like, it's really difficult to line up your... I mean, you can get draw out of this in two ways. Like, you can line it up with a village, or you can line it up with your gainer, and then poof, you get cards, right? But a lot of gainers are terminals, like you needed the village too, and like, I don't know, this reads a lot closer to me to +2 cards, rather than +2 cards, and oh, hey, I can make this a lab consistently most of the time. That's still really difficult to do, I think. By the way, I haven't played any games with this version of the card, so that's fun. I could be very wrong, but like I just don't see it being all that powerful. And $3 for 2 cards, I don't know. I think it's very close to that, so I give it a 5 out of 10. All right, this is a big number I gave this card. Let's talk about it. So Snowy Village, it's a 3-cost action. It says +1 card, +4 actions, and +1 buy. And then there's this tiny text that doesn't really matter. It says ignore any further actions you get this turn. I gave this thing a 9 out of 10. So let's be real. That drawback matters, right? It's a big deal. Like, it turns off your champion. It turns off your villager tokens. Like, you are only playing at most 4 more action cards on this turn, plus whatever actions you might have had before. So, like, the drawback matters, and I'm not pretending that it doesn't. On the other hand, this is only costs 3, and like Workers Village gives you a card and 2 actions and a buy and costs 4, and like this is 2 more actions. Like it's absolutely nuts what this card does for you on play. So I really like. I just want to say now there are a couple of cards in this set that are like really big effects with drawbacks. And I'm going to take a little bit of credit for that, because DXV was asking for ideas early on in development. And I was like, hey, I think a really cool design space is big effects with drawbacks. And, there's a few of those. And I'm really glad that they exist. So I really like this card, but I also think it's really powerful. So the effect is really good. When you can mitigate the downside, it's really, really great. If this is the only village... that severely limits what you can do, and I think it's pretty safe to say that like the broken stuff you can do, like most games of Dominion, like Dominion's broken, guys, but that broken stuff you can do, if this is the only village, that's a lower threshold, like that's a lower upper bound of like, you can't do as broken a stuff as you could do if there was like some other village, but I mean it has a buy on it, so like it's a buy and it doesn't cost you an action to play. I mean, you know what I mean. So that matters, and that already makes the card really good. It's a village. It can make you play more actions on your turn. But, like, that's so many actions. Like, so many times I'm just, like, shoving villages and like, other things into my deck, and I have to spend so much money on villages. And with Snowy Village, I buy 1 card, which is frequently all you want. And I get to like play +4 actions. So like I'm playing 3 additional terminals because I bought a $3 card. That's nuts. And let's talk about mitigating the downside of this. If you play it towards the end of your turn, you have mitigated the downside of this. So that's something that you can frequently do if you have a lot of deck control. And I think obviously this is going to be at its best in a deck with a lot of deck control. So with any other village, Snowy Village is just like, you shove it in your deck and it's absolutely amazing. You shove it in early, it does hard work all game, totally nuts. Like you're gonna be left in the dust if you don't do this. But let's say you draw it early in your turn. I mean, that's not great, but it's still like you're gonna have a halfway decent turn. And I think something that is overlooked a lot, by a lot of people when they discuss is like, you have stars in your eyes. You have this deck that does amazing things. And, when you dud, you whine about it and you curse your luck. But like that kind of thing happens a lot in Dominion. And what your deck does when it doesn't fully kick off and draw itself, that matters. Like if I can still have a good turn when I don't get to do absolutely everything my deck can do, that's a lot better than, oh, well, I'm getting in a state. And there are a lot of decks out there that have that issue. Snowy Village, like if you draw this instead of one of your other villages, like you're still gonna do okay. It's not unreasonable for you to like double province on a turn that starts with one of these. Like I'm not gonna turn up my nose at double province. So I think this card's really, really stinking good. It's a village. It gives you plus buy. It checks so many boxes. This card costs 4 for most of playtesting, and I thought, like, this really should cost 5. Like, this is absolutely busted, and here it is. It costs 3. I wasn't part of that discussion. Like, whew. This would be... I would still probably give it a 9 out of 10 if it costs 5. Because, like, I think the cost matters so little, to be honest, because, like, you frequently only want 1 or 2 of them in a deck. Most of the time, you just want 1. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Stockpile. So this is a 3-cost treasure. Gives you $3 in a buy. Hello. And then it says when you play this, exile it. Yeah, so it's like a 1-shot gold that gives you a buy, and it only costs 3. But it's not really a 1-shot gold, because it's only exiled. It's not getting trashed. So it's not like spoils. And there are 10 of these in the pile. So I think this matters. It matters a lot if you're playing this in a game with like more than 2 players. Stockpile gets much, much, much worse in games with more than 2 players. Because it's so incredibly good uncontested, but when contested, it gets a lot worse. I gave it an 8 out of 10, and that is definitely centered in 2-player games. If you let your opponent just have access to these stockpiles, they're going to destroy you. Like it's just so nutty to just like buy a bunch of stockpiles, and then like you're having these totally nutso turns really, really early, and you can continue to have those nutso turns. Where it gets bad is, right, oh, the stockpiles are out, and so now when I play this, it's exiled, and I can't get it back. So your deck is going to do really amazing stuff, and then it's just going to like grind to a screeching halt. And if you don't have a plan for that, like maybe you're hoping to get 4 provinces, and then poof, it's gone. The issue is, there's 10 of these, and that's like just the right number to where, like, if you don't go all in to contest it and just try and get as many as you can while they're still there, you're just going to be behind. And if I let my opponent get 6 or 7 of these, they can frequently turn that into either a deck that's just wildly better than mine sooner, or 5 provinces. And the fact that my opponent has this 5 provinces super lightning fast, and their deck is bad, that can be a win against someone who has been getting silvers and letting their opponent do stockpiles. So there's a huge new game dynamic that happens. I think this qualifies as like this is a big effect with a drawback, and I really like that this card exists. But like this is just so generically good, and it even has like a stinking buy on it that like. Yeah, this is really good. I gave it an 8 out of 10, and I was like contemplating giving it a 9 out of 10. Like this is a monster card. Really good stockpile. Next card, Bounty Hunter. Bounty Hunter is a 4-cost action. Gives you +1 action. Says exile a card from your hand. If you didn't have a copy of it in exile, +$3. I gave this card a 9 out of 10, and I thought long and hard about giving it a 10 out of 10. This card is... it's insane to open with. So when I wrote the Jack of all trades article, I said you need a really compelling reason to not open Jack. And I said one compelling reason is I have a 5/2, and there's good 5ers. Another compelling reason is Remake. And then Renaissance came out, and Priest came out. And Priest is definitely another compelling reason. So like Remake and Priest are cards that rival Jack in the opening in terms of like, oh, maybe I want this effect a little more than I want Jack's effect. Bounty Hunter definitely is another one of those cards. This card trashes an estate from your hand and gives you $3 the first time you play it. That's absolutely nuts. Like that, if that's all Bounty Hunter did, it would be like a 9 out of 10. I was just thinking about that, and that's kind of why I wanted to give it a 10 out of 10, is because of that. And man, I'm really tempted to just like switch. I'm really like on the fence of like, is this a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10? But I don't know. I still think it's a 9. because rating systems are like arbitrary and subjective. Anyway, that's not all this card does. It gives you plus $3 for trashing your first copper or curse or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is, like, you can stick duchies and provinces on your mat with this card. So not only does it give you that early game tempo boost, but this very same card that's already in your deck is just something that you play. It doesn't even take an action. And it's like, oh, yeah, this province, it's fine. I don't need to ever draw it again. So, like, it has all the upside of Native Village with those cool tricks you can do that I feel so clever when I manage to pull off and I get that effect. But it's just a card that I already have. I don't need setup other than to draw it with the province. And then that's it. The end. So I don't need to, like, rebuy it like I need to do with Island or anything like that. This card is totally nuts. Like, you definitely want to open with this in most situations where you see it. This is absolutely nuts. This is one of the strongest 9 out of 10s that I can give a card. And, like, really, you need a very compelling reason not to open with this card. I'm not going to say that it enables, like, the golden deck. Like, getting down to, you know, that Bishop Chapel golden deck where you get down to Bishop Gold, Silver, Province. And you Bishop the Province and rebuy the Province. And woo! I mean, that deck's not fantastic. And I would say Bounty Hunter's on the same level as that. It's not like a source of additional payload like Bishop can be, where you can just buy cards and get VP tokens and do that kind of thing and just score a bunch of points that way. This is like, you do have to buy victory cards, but it encourages you to green early because not only does it give you the early tempo boost, but you need to have the green cards and then exile them and then keep your deck viable. So it's kind of a different deck archetype, one that likes to green early and be reliable. And Bounty Hunter really, really pushes that super hard. This card is nuts. Totally broken, and I think it's cool. Next up, Cardinal. It's a 4-cost action attack. It says plus $2, and it says each other player reveals the top 2 cards of their deck, exiles 1 costing from 3 to 6, and discards the rest. So if I play this on you and you reveal 2 cards that could be exiled, you are the one that chooses. It's just like Knights, right? The only difference between this and the Knight attack is it exiles instead of trashing the card, and then it also doesn't die when it trashes another one. And it gives you $2. This card actually has been around since early Renaissance playtesting. The Exile mat used to be part of that, and then it got moved to this set. And for the longest time, in fact, I have actually never played with the 4-cost version of this. This thing costs 5. And it was, it's a thing that said attack, a relatively weak attack. I think it's fine for it in the abstract to cost 4 because it's, a lot less powerful than other 5ers. I think I would have preferred buffing it, like having it maybe do something other than give you just $2. I think the attack is still, it's an annoyance, but then there are those situations where, like, there's an important split of a card, and you can hit their card, and if you manage to hit their card, like their highway or whatever, if you manage to hit that after the highways are gone, then it's just as good as trashed. And that's where it can start to hurt. So, like, obviously the attack is much weaker than Knights. The issue is you can open with this card, and it's a fine opener, right? It gives you plus $2. And if you manage to hit your opponent's opening buy, like, it's like Swindler, only it has 2 chances to do that. And I just, that's not a card that you should be able to open with. It makes games less fun because a lot of times you're just kind of forced to do it, or like, you want to give yourself the chance to do that high roll, and then like it just feels bad for both players when it happens. So I don't like this card, and maybe that's influencing my rating. I'm only giving it a 5 out of 10. A lot of times you would rather just build your deck and hope terrible things don't happen to you. It certainly is not as powerful as Swindler because it doesn't like trash a good card and junk you. It just kind of takes your good cards away and maybe delays you having them for a little bit. But that matters, and it feels really bad when it happens. And it can lead to that similar like, oh, well, the game's over on turn 3 because I got hosed and there was nothing I could have done about it. Anyway, that's all I have to say about Cardinal. Next up is Cavalry. It's a 4-cost action. It says gain 2 horses. All right, that's kind of lame. But never fear, there's some text here. It says, when you gain this, +2 cards, +1 buy, and if it's your buy phase, return to your action phase. So yeah, that text is something that we don't see very much. So there's definitely the likeness to Villa. This is now another way for you to return to your action phase from your buy phase. Returning from your buy phase into your action phase is really stinking good. Yeah, I'm just going to say that. So that by itself, like if there was a blank card that did that, it would be pretty good in a lot of situations. Villa's use is like, oh crap, I'm out of actions. Well, I can pay $4. Well, which really, I mean, have $4, pay it, and, get the dollar in the buyback. And now I have some actions. Woo! And, building your deck that way is definitely really good. And Villa's on-gain, quote, on-gain effect, because it gains your hand and you play it. That's really good, okay? So Villa has definitely a lot going for it, and it's an extremely powerful card. Cavalry's not that good, but there's definitely a lot of room to be not as good as that and still be really good. I gave this card an 8 out of 10. The use case for Cavalry is, I drew a bunch of my payload, and I need to draw more cards because I've dudded. So I'm going to buy a Cavalry for 4, and I get some cards, I get my buyback, and then maybe I can continue my turn. So this is a way to exchange money for draw, and, just be able to use whatever you draw without really any of the restrictions that are on a lot of the events that are coming up later. But this thing... that's good, but it's definitely not as useful because the vanilla base case where, you're early on in the game in that money density paradigm, this trade-off just isn't quite as good in the abstract. You can't, as easily build a deck to take advantage of this type of effect and just get, some insane advantage from it like you can with Villa. You can just shove the terminals into your deck and then just get the Villas when you need it. And now you have Villas, and that's really not terrible because you have a deck full of terminals, and hopefully a lot of them draw. So that, it had that synergy, and then it had that use case, and then, oh, by the way, there's this effect that's absolutely broken that you can do all sorts of other shenanigans with, like the gain and play. Like Cavalry definitely has all that. In fact, it's even better because, you can buy a bunch of stuff, you can buy a Cavalry, and then, oh, I just drew the stuff I bought, and now I now I can play it. That's super great. Now, you can't draw your deck and then buy a Cavalry and then draw the Cavalry that you just bought because I don't think it works that way with the timing. So you can't I can gain 2 horses right away. Woo, I can do that. That's not a thing you can do. But, it just doesn't have that niche use case. And so that's why I only gave it an 8 out of 10 instead of 9 or 10 or whatever I gave Villa. So yeah, Cavalry. It's definitely something. It's one of those cards that it's sitting there in the middle of the board and it's making your deck better even though you haven't bought it. And that's just totally nuts. Groom. It's a 4-cost action. It says gain a card costing up to 4. If it's an action card, you get a horse. If it's a treasure card, you get a silver. If it's a victory card, you get a card and an action. First of all, I want to say that the art on this card, that man, is very attractive. We gave a lot of attention, and by we, I mean Jake gave a lot of attention to Swashbuckler and the art there, and, certain things he liked about that art, and good for him. But, this man is very well dressed. He's got great shoulders. I'm not into facial hair, but at least he keeps it nice and kempt. And he kind of has the same hairdo as this horse, which I think is very thematic. Big fan. Moving on, this card, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I definitely have lost games because I underestimated this card. It's a gainer, right? It's a workshop. But you get extra cool bits for gaining stuff. 4-cost workshops with benefits are usually stinking good. Because a lot of times, 3 and 4, the difference is not that much. And extra stuff is great. Ironworks is an obvious comparison. But Ironworks kind of cared about the fact that it was effectively non-terminal. You were almost always gaining actions with it. And that... that made it really good because it was basically +1 action, gain an action card, costing up to 4. And that was far better. There were other times you could use the other bonuses, and the flexibility was great, but that was the main thing. And this card doesn't have exactly that same, like, self-synergy. I just said self-synergy, and in a non-ironic way, and I don't know how I feel about that. Anyway, a lot of times when you gain cards, you want to gain action cards. That's just a fact. When they cost up to 4, most of what you want is action cards. I mean, silver's great, and, like, sure, I mean, absolutely, gaining a silver, I'm usually much happier to do that than I am to, like, get $1 this turn when I've decided I wanted to gain a treasure. Like, a lot of times I want the $1 so desperately that I'm willing to gain a treasure to do it or something like that with Ironworks. And, this is just a great way to shove 2 silvers in your deck, which is a fantastic thing to do for a lot of decks that really want payload or money density decks. When you gain a card, it's still terminal, and if it's an action card, you get a horse. Fantastic. Horses are fine, and there are lots of cool horse synergies out there, so that's neat. The victory card thing I actually think is more interesting, because, like, cantrip gain a thing is really good, and if that thing is good, like, the dual type victories, like, yeah, absolutely, like, that's totally busted like it is with Ironworks. But it's, definitely much better with Groom. But it makes gaining estates feel a lot less bad. But really, I think the main thing that Groom has that Ironworks doesn't, so the reason it's not just like a worse version of Ironworks, is it feels less bad to gain victory cards for it. So I think you'll find yourself maybe picking this up in those cases. I don't know. It's a 6 out of 10. Like, I normally just don't get this card and lose. So there you go. Hostelry. It's a 4-cost action. And it says +1 card, +2 actions. It's a village. And then it says when you gain this, you may discard any number of treasures revealed to gain that many horses. So you can overpay for this, and you can gain horses for overpaying. But it's a specific type of overpay. You have to, like, not play your treasures and then discard them, as opposed to, like, getting money from whatever and then, oh, I have money left over. Woo! I mean, you can kind of do that, but it's a little more restrictive. I gave this card a 7 out of 10, which is kind of like the baseline for what I give villages. It's getting that 7 out of 10 just because it's a village, to be honest. I really don't think this ability is all that useful. If I'm going to overpay for a 4-cost card, then I don't know, maybe I want a 5-cost card. I don't know. I guess I just don't have much else to say about this card. I don't think the ability is all that great. I mean, sure, use it, go ahead, whatever, get horses, woo! But I don't care, man. Like, if I'm gonna overpay for a card, I just want to put more payload in my deck. I don't want more horses. Like, whatever. Anyway, Village Green. Village Green is a 4-cost action duration reaction. Whoa! Look at that card color tech. It looks like Caravan Guard. Anyway, it says either now or at the start of your next turn, +1 card and +2 actions. And then it says when you discard this, other than during cleanup, you may reveal it to play it. So the duration-y bit, it's kind of there so that it was originally there to make the reaction good. Like, if I get hit by a militia, I can discard this, and then, oh, wait, I can use the duration thing instead of it being totally worthless, right? But, this has, like, a couple different things that it does, like a couple different modes. Obviously, you can just play it as a village, and neato, you did it. And, like, as we just saw, that gives you a 7 out of 10. And I gave this card an 8 out of 10. So, like, it stands to reason. I think the other things this card can do are pretty good. And I think most of that comes from the reaction-y bit. I really don't think that you want to be building decks that, like, play a village green for the duration effect, like, every turn, or really most of the time. Like, it's nice that, oh, I drew a village and nothing else. Well, I'm not going to play the village and hope I draw something. Well, I'll just punt it towards next turn. Like, obviously, it's great, but, like, why am I putting a village in that deck? I mean, maybe I added it a little earlier than normal, and that's a cool thing you can do with village green. Nice, but, like, I see that as the extent to where this duration thing is actually useful. So, like, other than that, I'm really not going to buy this card and put it in my deck and thinking, oh, I'm going to play this for the duration, and it's better because of that. I just don't think of that. But I really think that it's the same timing as Tunnel, right? If you discard it and it's not clean up, you get to do a cool thing. That I think is really good. Like you can target discard cards in Dominion, and if you do that, there are other synergies in the game, but like it's basically +1 card, +1 action if you manage to do that. So instead of discarding the card, you get to play it. That's really, really stinking good, especially because if I put this in a deck, I care about getting cards and actions, right? So I think that synergy is something that actually is very good and is going to make this card much, much better. It's like putting an extra village in your deck, right? Actually, it's a little bit better than that. So, it being a defense towards discard attacks is kind of neato, I guess. But, I mean, that's not going to make this card good when it wasn't already good, like Tunnel would, because Tunnel relies, it's a bad card, it doesn't do anything, so it kind of needs that in order to be good, and obviously Tunnel's not a great card overall, but Village Green's it's really good, 8 out of 10. I even toyed with giving this a 9 out of 10, but I just think that it requires synergy to be more than a $4 village, because the standard duration thing is not that fantastic. So yeah, 8 out of 10. Good card, and I think it's pretty neat. There's a lot of different moving parts that come together in a novel and yet interesting way. So I think this card's really cool. All right, on to the fivers. So Barge. Barge is a 5-cost action duration. It says either now or at the start of your next turn. +3 cards and +1 buy. It's kind of fitting that we talked about this right after Village Green. I gave this an 8 out of 10, and I don't think you're going to be playing this for the duration ability super duper often. Let me just say this: a card that it costs 5 and gives you just $3 and 3 cards and a buy, like that's an 8 out of 10. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but like that's really stinking good. You really want to draw a lot of cards and get a buy with it. Like that pack is just really, really good. So already Barge is at a great starting point. And then it has like this minor little upside of like, well, I'm going to draw stuff dead this turn, so, I'll just punt it later. But like, Haunted Woods is really not good as a draw card when you compare it to like Smithy, right? Because you have to buy 2 of them to draw 3 cards every turn. And if you're going to do that with Barge, that's expensive. I don't want to do that. So like, I really want to be playing my Barge as just as 3 cards and a buy most of the time. And that's an 8 out of 10. That's really stinking good. And then there's this tiny little upside. Great. Moving on, here's Coven. Coven is a 5-cost action attack. Gives you an action and $2. And it says each other player exiles a curse from the supply. If they can't, they discard their exiled curses. So it's a junking attack, and it's non-terminal. Obviously, that looks scary. And the art looks scary too, because, I assume that was on purpose. I gave this a 9 out of 10. It's a junking attack. I think it's on par with Witch. It's non-terminal, and it gives you money, so you can just like shove these in your deck and be pretty happy with it. Silver's a good card, right? The downside, though, is that it doesn't give the curses until later, right? So once the curses are gone, and then you play a Coven, that's when all of a sudden the curses are flooding in. Now, I've heard some people out there saying that, like, sometimes that's better. It's better to junk them later than it is to junk them now. And I kind of reject that. I really don't think it is. Like, sometimes decks are vulnerable to junking later, and so you get a junker later. But that's more like the opportunity cost of you getting the junker as opposed to like the effect of junking later. This would be a much more powerful card. In fact, it would be a terrible card. I wouldn't want to print it if it just gave them the curse instead of exiling the curse and then making them wait until you just dump all the curses in their deck. With that said, gives curses, man. And they're going to have those curses. They're going to have the points right away. That totally matters. But, they're still going to get the negative points even if the curses don't run. But who are we kidding? They're definitely going to run because this is non-terminal and you just shove a bunch of these in your deck. 9 out of 10, Coven, it junks. The comparison to Witch is very apt. All right, next up is Displace. It's a $5 action. It says exile a card from your hand. gain a differently named card costing up to $2 more than it. I gave this card an 8 out of 10. This is very strong. I think Replace is a decent comparison, but the thing is, this works a lot better on victory cards. So, like, what you can't do is displace province, gain a province, and oh, I just gained a province to my exile mat. I mean, obviously that's busted. But, you know, with 2 displaces, you can effectively make that happen if you're drawing enough. You can, like, displace a duchy and then, like, get basically anything, right? It's really good. The only reason you would rather trash a card as opposed to exiling a card is if it's a curse. That's really the only place where displace is worse. But, like, you know, this kind of a card doesn't like to trash curses anyway, and you know, it's just a point. Like, you're still getting a bad card out of your deck. Like, you can displace a curse into a copper just like Butcher does, and, like, well, I mean, you're not getting the Covfefe, but I mean, it's still something that you do sometimes, and that effect is decent. This card can just do so much more, though. It's great for trashing estates. It's great for trashing cards you don't want to use anymore. It's fantastic for trashing victory cards. Absolutely fantastic for trashing victory cards. Just totally nuts for trashing victory cards. And, like, it's just, whew! You can exile a province and you just gain whatever you want and you don't lose the points. Like, that is so crazy. That's so powerful. 8 out of 10. All right, moving on. Falconer. It's a 5-cost action reaction. Gain a card to your hand costing less than this. And then the reaction part is when any player gains a card with 2 or more types, action, attack, etc., you may play this from your hand. So it's kind of a way to make this non-terminal, right? The benefit of reacting with this is that you don't have to spend an action on it. And that's really it. So this card's a gainer. It gains to hand, and it gains cards costing up to 4 to hand. Sculptor is a pretty good analog. The difference is that with Sculptor, you could get a villager token if you gained a treasure. Villagers are better than just playing it non-terminally, but that's kind of what it is. So I think this is probably in the abstract a little bit weaker than Sculptor, but in the base case is almost like always just the same card. So when your opponent, like, buys a Falconer or whatever, you know, you can make this non-terminal. I don't know. The reaction just seems very, very narrow. It's not going to matter all that often. So you're just kind of getting the downside of, like, oh, I can't sculpt the silver and bank a villager for later. With that said, I think it's still pretty strong effect. I give it a 7 out of 10. Gatekeeper. 5-cost action duration attack. At the start of your next turn, plus $3. Until then, when another player gains an action or treasure card they don't have an exiled copy of, they exile it. So I gave this a 7 out of 10. The idea is it does nothing for you now, but gives you $3 at the start of next turn. And then it annoys your opponent. Whatever they gain this turn, they may not get it right away. This card used to cost 4. It was really nuts at 4. It's kind of the reason that I don't think Cardinal should cost 4. So I'm glad this one doesn't also cost 4, but the fact is this was more nuts, and also the benefit of, like, getting 3 next turn is it's pretty decent. It's pretty on par. It also it does damage more consistently, right? Now they can keep, it can't, like, lock them out. You can't, like, Gatekeeper lock them out of the game and just, like, play a Gatekeeper every turn, or, like, you can't do that and then stop them from doing anything, right? Because it only kind of works on the first copy of the card. Like, if they have an exiled copy of, they can still gain it and not exile it, but then they get all the ones that were exiled before. So, like, it's really just a delay. You're really not locking them out of anything unless, I mean, it prevents them from getting the last one in the pile and they don't have one on the mat. That's super narrow, though. So it could be my rating is inflated because this used to be better and cost less because it was better that way. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, this is strong. 7 out of 10. I give it a 7 out of 10. I could see, like, 6 or 5 being reasonable, though. Hunting Lodge, $5 action. +1 card, +2 actions. It's a $5 village. Villages are good. You may discard your hand for +5 cards. I gave this an 8 out of 10. So the fact that, my standard, it's a village, so it gets a 7 out of 10. This one costs 5, which is a big deal, and I still gave it an 8. Means that I think that this ability, you may discard your hand for +5 cards. I think it's really good. I think this is one of those villages that you put in your deck, a lot earlier than normal. It can be your first 5er or, earlier 5er. A lot earlier than you might put other villages in your deck. Even if you just don't intend to play actions using those +2 actions, just being able to have that bad seller effect is really good early on. It's like a free guide, but you get it right away. That's really stinking good. I'm not really warm on draw to X decks, but this does have that cursed village kind of feeling where you get the village part and the draw part in the same card, so you can spam these and kind of make a deck that way with whatever payload, could be terminal or whatever. And that's pretty okay. I mean, you don't have to draw with all these to make it okay, but it has all the problems that draw to X decks do. The nice thing about this is that it doesn't have the problem that Cursed Village does, meaning that when you spam Cursed Villages like you really want to be doing, you're going to get hexed a whole bunch and bad things are going to happen to you. This doesn't really have that problem. It just doesn't have that drawback. You draw a card less, basically. But discarding your hand is actually pretty good for those draw to X decks. So, you don't have to do this every time. So you can play Hunting Lodge, and then some terminals, and then play another one, and then cycle out the bad stuff, right? You don't have to discard. It's optional discard, and I think that's very good. That's why I gave this card an 8 out of 10. I'm not going to say that this pushes draw to X decks all that much, because they just have fundamental problems that are really hard to deal with. But, I think it's pretty good. 8 out of 10. Let's talk about Kiln. $5 action. Gives you +2. Says the next time you play a card this turn, you may first gain a copy of it. I gave this a 6 out of 10. I understand that I think a lot of people really like this card more than 6 out of 10. And, there are some really cool things you can do with it. The problem is this card is really hard to get this card to gain you stuff other than payload. I think it's hard enough that it's not something that you can really rely on and I'm going to put this card in my deck and I'm going to gain deck control with it. That's just so incredibly hard to do because you have to play a village first, and then you have to play this, and then the next card you play is a deck control card. And then, how good is gaining a deck control card mid-turn, right? It's not like a Haggler, where I think Haggler is much more flexible in what it can gain, and, the timing is a lot less bad. Sure, you can kill and gain payload and draw it. That's a thing you can do, and that's something Haggler can't do. On the other hand, I think most of the time you're just going to be gaining treasures with this, and sometimes you're going to be gaining, some other payload card. But then, do I really want a terminal to do that? Oh, sometimes I do, but I guess that's what I think of Kiln. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Maybe this has some busted synergies that I'm just not thinking of. I mean, villagers are kind of cool, and Coin of the Realm or whatever, but I don't know. I think it's a 6 out of 10. I think it compares to Explorer more than a lot of other things. All right, Livery. Livery is a $5 action. Gives you +3. That's great. This turn, when you gain a card costing 4 or more, gain a horse. So, Livery. There used to be another card called Livery. It gained a horse whenever you played a gold. And I thought that card was really cool. And Donald X cut it. And I was really sad. And I fought hard for that card to stay, but it was not a... Well, okay, I didn't fight that hard, but I really liked that card. I thought it was really cool. And... now we have this. So, this card is fine, right? It's just not the old one, and I'm disappointed by it. And that's just how I feel. In any case, horses are great. And if you have extra gains, and you can gain a lot of cool stuff, you can get a lot of horses with it, and that's great. And you get $3. That's really great. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I don't have any other amazing insights because I actually have never played with this version of the card. So I'm not going to talk out my butt here. Mastermind! This card, I just want to point out that I think the art is captivating and beautiful. It's been talked about. The art on this card looks just like me. As far as I know, this wasn't intentional. I was never contacted about it. I was just surprised as everyone else when it came out. Donald X has said that it was not something he asked the artist to do. On the other hand, that guy looks just like me. It is nuts how much he likes me. And like all the people that I've talked to about this, my wife, my coworkers, everything, you know, I've told them what I just said, that, you know, as far as I know, it's not intentional. And they're all like, that looks way too much like you to not be intentional. I don't know that I necessarily feel that way. I think, I don't know, my money is on that it's a coincidence, but I'm just going to hold on to the idea that the artist found me and made this card to look like me. I think it's hilarious and amazing, and it makes me very happy that this card looks just like me. And if I could put myself on a Dominion card, it would be a card like this, because I think this card's really cool. Like, totally not so busted, right? Focal point of every game, loud and obnoxious, just like me. But also, like, if I could make myself into Dominion art, I would probably look a lot like that. Like, the evil genius kind of thing. Like, ooh. And then, like, he's got the bags under his eyes, and I kind of have, like, permanent bags under my eyes. Like, people are always telling me, like, man, you look so tired. Just because I am. I just think it's really cool. And like whenever I'm playing online and when I get my physical cards, like I'm going to look at this as like, oh, I'm on a Dominion card. And that's just the thing that enters my brain. So like, oh man, I just get giddy about it. Anyway, enough gushing about the art. This is a 5-cost action duration. It says, at the start of your next turn, you may play an action card from your hand 3 times. I gave this a 9 out of 10, and it's a pretty good 9 out of 10. I don't think it's a 10 out of 10, but like, I mean, there's the comparison to King's Court. You have to wait a turn, and it has to start in your hand, but you get to play it at the start of your turn, and you get to play it 3 times. The big thing that King's Court has over this is that in order to chain King's Court, you get that right away, right? All you got to do is draw King's Court, and then a thing that you want to king. And then you're good. You can do that every turn, and you get it. With Mastermind, though, you have to play a Mastermind, and then next turn, Mastermind your Mastermind that you drew in your starting hand. And then the following turn, now you're tripling it. So you have to, number 1, buy more Masterminds, but number 2, wait longer to get the effect. But this thing costs 5, so you can just pick it up. So, like, once you have any halfway decent target in your deck, you just shove these in your deck, and then, like, eventually you're going to get to do some busted, broken stuff. And eventually, you know, it does feel like King's Court, in the sense of what you're doing, and like, you know, the first person to get there and get online is going to just like boss the Mastermind split, and then they have like 7 or 8, and they can do all those insane things that you can't do. I would say that that's different than King's Court, but like realistically, it's not. It's so strange that both people, like, you know, they split the King's Court pile equally, and then they just, you know, build both their half busted decks. Like it's just not really a thing that happens in a lot of games, and it's not going to happen in Mastermind games. But yeah, this is King's Court. It costs 5. You just have to wait longer to do the thing, but you get it at the start of your turn. Incredibly strong. Incredibly strong. I can see arguments for making this a 10 out of 10, but I don't know, I just think it's a really strong 9. There you go. And the art, beautiful. Ha. Like, I could cosplay as this guy. All I need to do is make my hairline recede a little more and get, like, a brown tunic, and then, like, just have someone do some makeup on me, and, like, that's it. Like, I went easy Halloween costumes are my jam. Like, young me looked a lot like young Daniel Radcliffe, so, you know, I just walk around with a stick and, like, someone have Sharpie a scar on my forehead, and I'm Harry Potter, like, because I wore glasses when I was a kid. Like, easy. Oh, man, I'm just tickled. Absolutely tickled about this card. Paddock. It's a $5 action, plus $2, gain 2 horses, and then gain. You get plus 1 action per empty supply pile. This is solid for money density decks. Quite good, because I think realistically you're not going to get the action or multiple actions from this very often. This is like never going to be a village for you. That's not realistic. And if it is, it's not even a great village. Like, it doesn't draw cards. It's like a festival almost. Only instead of a buy, you get horses, in which, like, that's often worse, right? With that said, though, like, in a money density deck, this is really, really good. It's really, really good. It's really good. And you're going to want a lot of these, especially if your opponent's not going for money density. I'm not going to say this pushes non-money density, but it's just so solid for that deck. I gave it 6 out of 10. All right, here we go. This is it. This is the 10 out of 10 I gave for the entire set. I've been really close on a couple other cards, and all of these are the hottest of takes, so it may not stay that way. But this is the one. I'm giving it to this one. Sanctuary. It's a 5-cost action. It gives you card, an action, and a buy. It says you may exile a card from your hand. It's busted. You get this in like every stinking game. You get a lot of them in every stinking game. And yeah. It's insane. I really think that I don't think this card should have been printed. Honestly, like, this card went through a lot of minor tweaks, but the soul of this card is cantrip, you may exile a card from your hand. There were other little bonuses. They ended on buy, which I think is one of the stronger ones. Whew! But you always get this. It's always really, really good. And then in some cases, it's just totally, totally nutso. Because you can, like, exile provinces. Like, it gets you to a deck really fast, and, like, man, it all just starts feeling the same way. I don't like that this card exists. I think it should have just been deleted and have another card idea, like my livery idea. Not that I'm salty about that, but yeah. Absolutely nuts. It's, I wouldn't go so far as to say it warps the game as much as other 10 out of 10s do, but it's just so good and just so solid. I can see an argument for giving this a 9. I would not go below 9. And I can see maybe arguments for, like, Mastermind being a 10 out of 10 because of the game warpiness. But card ratings are arbitrary and subjective, and I gave this a 10 out of 10. Absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. It looks so innocent, but yet is not. Sanctuary. All right, Fisherman, 5-cost action. Gives you a card action, $1, so it's a peddler, and then it says, during your turns, if your discard pile is empty, this costs 3 less. So it's a peddler, and it costs 5, but maybe it costs 2. That's what it is. 5-cost peddler, meh. I gave, like, Artificer a 5 out of 10 or something like that, and I really don't think the ability on Artificer is all that great. So, you know, a 2-cost peddler is pretty good, I guess, but, like, this condition is almost never going to happen. I mean, it's going to happen sometimes, and you get it, and woo, you have a peddler, but, like, blech, 5 out of 10. It's fine, it's a peddler, it costs 5, but, like, that's all this card is. Meh. Destrier. How do you say that? 6-cost action gives you plus 2 cards, plus 1 action. It's a lab. It says during your turns, this costs $1 less per card you gain this turn. So it's a lab that costs 6, but it can cost less. Now, by itself, this is a lab for 6. Lab is a fine card, and sure, I'd pay 6 for it a decent amount of the time. But I think I gave lab like an 8 or something like that. I'm giving this an 8 too. I think it's hard to get this to cost much less, but you know, when it does, usually you can just pile these things. Like, if you get an abundance of buys, you can just, like, shove 7 labs in your deck. And so it has the peddler problem that way. But this is a lab, so I think that impact is slightly more. And I don't know, I just don't like that. If you were going to put this costing 1 less per card you gain this turn, I just don't think lab is the right card to do it with. And that makes me sad. but 8 out of 10. I mean, it's a lab for 6. Sometimes it can like be this degenerate first player advantage thing where one person just wins the game because they did the Destrier thing first and they piled them. That feels good. Glad that happened. Wayfarer, 6 cost action, plus 3 cards. You may gain a silver. This has the same cost as the last other card gained this turn, if any. So if I play a witch and my opponent gains a curse, this costs 0. Neato. Now, the fact that it costs less is less of a big deal on Wayfarer as it is for Destrier, because this is terminal, and you may not want 10 of these in your deck immediately, ASAP, all the time, shove them in my face. On the other hand, plus 3 cards, you may gain a silver, totally nuts. Plus 3 card, you must gain a silver, totally nuts. Just an incredibly strong card. Silver is a really good card. I think this card may look innocent, but gaining a silver in a deck where you're just like drawing 3 cards, it's a lot like how Treasure Chest for Swashbuckler is never, ever, 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 ever bad, ever, if you have it. You don't even have to gain the silver here. Like, did you know that Smithy is overpowered? This is really, really stinking good. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Really good, really powerful, totally nuts. And sometimes it costs less than 6. Woo! All right, the last of the Kingdom cards, Animal Fair. 4 out of 10. Gives you plus $4 and plus 1 buy per empty supply pile. And then it says it costs 7. 7 costs action. Instead of paying this card's cost, you may trash an action card from your hand. So, this doesn't really work as the only plus buy. It's hard to empty a pile to get your buy without some other source of plus buy. So it's kind of like City in that regard. I mean, gainers can work, and sure, that's fine. But you definitely need some support, and just like getting a buttload of money on a terminal card can only take you so far. I think where this card is really good is like Necropolis, basically. Or like some other piddly action that you don't really care about. Or like Ruins or whatever. But even then, like, meh. I think Necropolis is where this card's actually good. If I can spend a turn turning my Necropolis into this thing in the opening, sign me up, bro. I'm all in. Like, give me that. But like, I don't think this is fantastic. I gave it a 4 out of 10, and I'm not super impressed. All right, that's it for the Kingdom cards. Now there's Events and Ways. I'm going to try and go through these a lot faster because there's less experience I have with them, and also, you know, they're not Kingdom cards. But, you know, events are good. Anyway, let's get going here. Let's do Lightning Round. Delay is a 0-cost event. You may set aside an action card from your hand at the start of your next turn. Play it. 6 out of 10. I think this is quite good. You're spending buys in order to basically get a village effect. I think that's fantastic. You have to wait a turn to get it, whatever. I think this is going to be useful in many, many situations, and you're definitely going to build around the fact that you can have this. If there are buys, spare buys, this is definitely really good, and I think it's worth doing. Desperation, 0-cost event. Once per turn, you may gain a curse. If you do, plus 1 buy and plus $2. So I need $2. Am I willing to take a curse to get it? Most of the time, with cursed gold, you're not willing to take $3 in order to get a curse. But I think the times where you're most willing to do that are in the opening, where you can open with a card, especially one that trashes. Or in the end game, where either the curses are gone, obviously, or you're just trying to get points and you maybe aren't going to draw that curse very much. The case where there's strong trashing and you have deck control is in there, but I don't think this is quite as solid there. I mean, Curse Gold isn't quite as solid there. I gave this a 5 out of 10. But, I think this is a really neat thing. Gamble, it's a 2-cost event. Plus 1 buy. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a treasure or action, you may play it. Otherwise, discard it. So I gave this a 4 out of 10. I think this event costs too much in order to be generically good. And so you need a very specific situation for this to be worth it. It costs you 2 and not a buy. The thing is, though, you really only want to be hitting payload cards with this. If you hit any deck control, then you're usually not able to do much with it. You can play it directly, but like if you like draw treasures or something, or draw actions that you want to play, you can't do that because you're already past the point in your buy phase where you can do that. So without some other specific synergy like Toil or Cavalry or Villa or whatever, like that's just going to be useless. And I think a lot of the times where you're in a situation where you would be willing to spend this is where, oh crap, I drew my payload or some bad cards on my turn and I want to save my turn. Gamble just doesn't do that for you. So now I'm looking at like, oh, is the average effect of a card in my deck that I didn't draw going to be worth more than $2? And man, that's asking a lot of your deck. So like, I think if you're fishing for an attack, like, or if you just have 2 extra money and maybe you're gonna fish for an attack, or if I have a bunch of money on my turn and what I want to be doing is not making a bunch of money, I can kind of convert that into something else, or maybe like some plus buy card or other payload card, and maybe that's okay. I think this is really narrow, so gamble 4 out of 10. Pursue. 2-cost event gives you +1 buy. Says name a card, reveal the top 4 cards of your deck, put the matches back, and discard the rest. This is differently flavored Scouting Party. Gave Scouting Party a 4. I give this a 4. Fantastic. The nice thing about this, though, is that this is a lot better at making clean shuffles for you. Because it's 4 and not 5. You don't have to top deck stuff if you don't think you're going to want to do that. And you can fish for one very particular thing. Or you can like name Bulbasaur or whatever. Like I think that's whatever. 4 out of 10 is a lot like Scouting Party. Ride. 2-cost event, gain a horse. So it's like there's an extra kingdom pile where you can just buy horses for 2. $5 $2 and a buy. This is fantastic. Like I want this. A lot of times you do that with encampment anyway when you have no intent of using the action. But like if there are buys in abundance or whatever, like shove horses in your deck. This is just great. I think it's great. 6 out of 10. That doesn't mean you're going to do it a whole bunch, but like it's an event, man. Toil. 2-cost event gives you +1 buy. Says you may play an action card from your hand. I gave this a 7 out of 10. And this is a village, right? You're spending $2 to basically have played a village. And you only have to do it when you need it the most. So you can actually over terminal and make this kind of thing happen. This really changes the way you build your deck in a very positive way. And even though it is high cost, man, that cost is worth it in a lot of cases. And it's just a nice little safety net to make you feel good about building more aggressively. And I think that's a very big deal. So yeah, this one's very good. 7 out of 10. Enhance. It's a $3 event. It says you may trash a non-victory card from your hand to gain a card costing up to $2 more than it. This can't trash victory cards. It can't trash estates, and it doesn't really like to trash coppers either because it can only gain something costing up to 2 more. So I gave this a 3 out of 10. The base use case is really, really bad. Like this is really only good for like, enhancing a curse into a copper, but for $3 and a buy, that feels bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great. It's fine, but like if this is the best you can do, you're still pretty sad. Or like action cards you're done with. That's it. I just think it's so narrow that that's why I gave it the 3 out of 10. But hey, when it's good, like it is good, and I think curse trashing is like its main use case. March. $3 event. It says look through your discard pile. You may play an action card from it. I gave this a 3 out of 10, and the main reason I did is because it's really hard to set up something in your discard pile that you want to play. It has to be in your discard pile. And so I think Toil costing much less than this and having it be in your hand, like all of that is upside. Like I understand, it doesn't come from your hand, boop-a-doo, but like, man, I just think March is a lot worse. Also, this thing costs a buy, and I think that matters a lot too. Anyway, Transport, 3-cost event. Choose one. Exile an action card from the supply, or put an action card you have in exile onto your deck. So Transport is good to just pull, you get this twice, and then you have an action card. So it has, those same synergies as like the Camel Train and the Lurker, where like You do a thing twice, and then you get any action card, so the expensive ones that are hard to get. So obviously, that base use case is pretty good. But also, it's a better way of doing what I suggested with Camel Train, right? You pay $3 in a buy for a thing that you were already going to get, and now the extra copies cost $3. So it's kind of like what Changeling wishes it could be. I gave this a 5 out of 10. I think it's pretty decent. Banish. 4-cost event. Exile any number of cards with the same name from your hand. So this can trash an estate for 4 in the opening. That's usually quite good. This can maybe trash multiple estates if you draw some cards. Maybe. Kind of like trade. Only not as good, but it costs less. That's decent. And I think it's good for exiling provinces. It's like an island that you get right away, but only if you need it because it's an event, but then you don't get the 2VP and kind of like Island. All of these are like okay, but it's just so narrow. Like you're never gonna like shove a bunch of coppers on your exile. Like maybe you can it doesn't counter Coven, right? Like I'm just trying to think of how you can get a bunch of curses onto your exile. And like, yeah, you might be able to get your deck up and running, and then like, oh, I banish all my curses. Then they just play Coven again, and it's back. But like, hey, they're in your discard. Maybe that's a thing you can do. I don't know. It's kind of narrow, and the effect is, I don't know, kind of decent, but it just compares unfavorably to like actually trashing cards. So I gave it a 5 out of 10. Bargain. 4-cost event. Gain a non-victory card costing up to 5. Each other player gains a horse. So this is like Feast. I have 4 and I want a 5-er. But instead of like waiting to draw your Feast and play your Feast and then draw the 5-er, you can have it right away if you give your opponent a horsey. But you can't get victory cards. I think it's good. You're gonna open with this a lot. And maybe you get it some other times too. 6 out of 10. Invest. 4-cost event. Exile an action card from the supply. While it's in exile, when another player gains or invests in a copy of it, plus 2 cards. Obviously, you do this on spammable stuff. You have to keep it in exile for a while, but you get some cards instead of the benefit of the card. I don't know, like drawing cards at a time where you don't get to choose is, it's okay, I guess. But then you also don't get the benefit of having that spammable card in your deck sooner, because you have to have like a copy of that in exile. And it's not like you can, well, I guess, never mind. I was going to say something stupid, but it doesn't matter. I gave this a 5 out of 10. I think there's some big hype about this. And like, yeah, it's fine. 5 out of 10, but man, I just don't think this is game breaking. Seize the Day. 4-cost event. Once per game, take an extra turn after this one. You take an extra turn. No restrictions. Get 5 cards. You can buy cards. It like even stacks on top of those other things. Only costs you 4 and a buy. This is totally nuts. You're going to do this like every stinking game, and it's going to be fan-freaking-tastic. The worst case for this is like, I'm playing money, and I didn't get my province hand. Let me have another shot at it. That's really good. And it just gets way, way better from there. Like once you have like a couple gains on a turn, you just jam this thing, and then like you get an extra. I mean, it's really good. 9 out of 10. Commerce. It's a 5-cost event. Gain a gold per differently named card you've gained this turn. You can get a lot of golds with this thing. 6 out of 10, man. You don't even have to draw your deck like Windfall, and you can usually control exactly how many golds you're going to gain with this thing, because you can just if you don't want to, if I'm going to gain like 5 differently named things, and I don't want 5 golds, well, I can just get this in between my buys, and then I'm good, right? So that's fine. $5 for a stack of golds, pretty good. It's conditional. You really want a deck that draws itself, so it kind of has a similar restriction to Windfall in order for you to like actually get value out of this. But 6 out of 10. I think it's pretty decent. Demand, 5-cost event. Gain a horse and a card costing up to 4, both onto your deck. So this is like a much worse version of Summon, because you can kind of draw it for free because of the horse, but you don't get to play it. You don't get the action effectively. Summon was great. So this is like, I don't know, okay, you pay an extra $1 to like top deck your card, but hey, you get an extra card. Neato, 6 out of 10. Stampede, 5-cost event. If you have 5 or fewer cards in play, gain 5 horses onto your deck. Gaining 5 horses onto your deck is really, really, really good. However, this condition is not something that's super sustainable. I have looked really hard for synergies with this. Like a deck that's quick to set up and can do like Province plus Stampede in a turn. I haven't found anything like that. I'm not saying it's not out there, and once it's out there, depending on how common it is, I could definitely see this rating going up. But I think it's just so hard to do this because playing 5 or fewer cards, that includes all your treasures. I think you're going to get this a decent amount of the time, especially like, I don't know, like early on when 5 isn't a fantastic turn, but like you can just shove 5 horses on top of your deck. Like, that seems fine, I guess. If you're like looking for a really expensive card, if you want to hit like 6 or 7, but I hit 5, like that's a decent use case. I gave this card a 5 out of 10 because it's like there's 5s all over the card. It costs 5 or fewer cards in play, 5 horses on your deck. There's 5 horses and then 3 other ones, so I felt that 5 was the only appropriate rating to give. Reap, 7-cost event. Gain a gold, set it aside. If you do, at the start of your next turn, play it. Gold costs 6, and for $1 extra, you just get to $3 next turn for free. Now, granted, 7 is an exact price point for the kind of decks where you want to be gaining lots of gold. But hey, if you hit 7, you're definitely going to do this. I think it compares decently well to Wedding, actually. The only weird thing is you have to hit the price point. But I think the upside of $3 next turn, playing a gold for free, is probably better in the abstract than a VP token. I don't know. I gave it a 5 out of 10. Enclave, 8-cost event. Gain a gold, exile a duchy from the supply. Well, this is obviously good when I hit 8 and I was going to buy a gold anyway. When you want payload and you're willing to pay a little bit extra for it, you can just like get 3 VP tokens. And 3 VP tokens is definitely enough to matter. So it's, the Wedding comparison being 1 VP token and me poo-pooing that is, that's why I feel this way. I gave this a 5 out of 10. It's a lot to pay, but hey, if you need payload and you need more money when you had 8 to spend on a gold, then sure, yeah, do this. Yeah, 5 out of 10. Alliance, 10-cost event. These next 2, the 10-cost events, are like the big effects with drawbacks, right? Really powerful, but potentially drawbacks. So this is a 10-cost event. It says gain a province, a duchy, an estate, a gold, silver, and a copper. I remember when this also used to gain a curse, and I think that's hilarious. But I gave this a 4 out of 10 as it is now. Obviously it wasn't that great. You get a bunch of stuff and shove it in your deck, and we have 10. I think this is like 10 points for $10 when you care little about the quality of your deck. That's what I think this is good for, and, that's worth building towards some of the times, but, 4 out of 10. Next up, Populate. It's a 10-cost event. Gain 1 card from each action supply pile, even the ones you didn't want. I give this a 5 out of 10. I think it's better, because action cards are generally better than any other cards out there. Treasure cards and victory cards. Do I actually mean that? Yeah, probably. In any case, you can get a lot of stuff, and sometimes paying 10 for an event is easier than other things you can do to get that stuff. I'm looking at you, Potion cards and Grand Market, but really I'm not going to gain 10 cards just to get a Grand Market. That's all I really want. This depends very much on how easy it is to hit 10 and how good it is to just like shove a billion cards in your deck all in your face at once. So I gave it a 5 out of 10. I think it's pretty narrow, but like the upside of this is much bigger, and I think it's less narrow. All right, we're going on to the ways. Ways I think are really, really cool, and in general, I think they changed the game a lot. What does it mean to give a power level to a way? I don't know, but I don't even know what it means to give a power level to a card, so whatever. But I'm going to have a lot less to say about these because I've played with these even less than the other things. Way of the Butterfly. But yeah, a way is just, it's like whenever I play an action card, I can choose to do what the way says instead of what the action card says. And the rules are a lot like Enchantress. So like below the line text is preserved, so the travelers still get to do their travel-y thing. But yeah, anyway. Way of the Butterfly. You may return this to its pile to gain a card costing exactly one more than it. I think this is really good. This is like one of the best Feast variants there is. And Feast was quite good. You can just like shove a 4-cost action in your deck, and hey, if it's good, it's good, but if not, or even if it is good, maybe I want the 5 or that much more. Give it to me. Way of the Butterfly, 7 out of 10. Way of the Camel. Exile a gold from the supply. The fact that this is a way means you can do it when it's good. You can just like gain a gold with a card in a lot of situations. I think that's pretty good. Narrow, but like it's pretty good when you can do it. So yeah, 5 out of 10. Way of the Chameleon. Follow this card's instructions. Each time that would give you plus cards this turn, you get money instead, and vice versa. So I think the comparison here is to Storyteller. Storyteller converts your coins into cards, and that seems to be like what you want, because in the abstract, cards are better than coins. And the fact that Way of the Chameleon is a way means that it's better than Storyteller in that sense, because you can put these cards that are generically good, or you might use it for one purpose and then you might use it for another. You can pick and choose depending on what's happening this turn or like what cards you have. So the obvious thing is you can just like build a deck that's all draw, and then when you're done drawing, instead of cards, now you get dollars. That's not great. That's like vault as payload, but okay, sure, you can do it. I don't know. I think it's just so incredibly narrow for this to be really good, and it's lackluster, so I gave it a 4 out of 10. But it's a very exotic effect, and I think there are some synergies out there that can make it super great, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I think maybe super great's an exaggeration. Way of the Frog. +1 action. When you discard this from play this turn, put it onto your deck. This is a way to prevent like your colliding terminals, right? I don't have an action, so I'll just top deck it for next turn if I want to. I gave it a 5 out of 10. It's pretty useful. You can over terminal. Nice. Way of the Goat. Trash a card from your hand. I want to clarify that the goat on this art is not Jasper. Jasper is the heirloom goat, and he is special, and he matters. This is just a generic goat, and I do not care about him the way I care about Jasper. As such, I only give this goat a 5 out of 10. It's like you can have a trade route whenever you want. Trade route's not fantastic, but like this trashes cards, so trashing is great. So you want that. Way of the Horse. +2 cards, +1 action, return this to its pile. So you make anything into a horse. This horse is really buff. Would not mess with that horse, but he's also pretty good looking. He's probably got like that groom haircut that I was talking. Anyway, so this has like a decent base case, like action cards that you don't want or aren't doing it for you right now. You can sack them to draw some cards. That's already pretty good. But this has synergy with actual horses, because if you have an actual horse and you play it as Way of the Horse, it doesn't go back because it's not in the supply. So you can just gain, when you're gaining horses, now you can gain labs. And Way of the Horse has like just so many synergies. I think it's much more common, and like this effect is actually really quite good. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Man, I'm wishing I gave it an 8 now. Way of the Mole. +1 action, discard your hand, +3 cards. I guess this is fine in some decks where you're absolutely desperate and your hand sucks, But this is like draw to X at its worst. 3 cards is not enough to really do anything with. I know this is a way. It's really tempting to make this work. It doesn't. 4 out of 10. I don't think this is good. Way of the Monkey, 4 out of 10. I don't know, like 3 is about the lowest I'm willing to give away because you could just never use it and be fine, right? But I mean, 4 is pretty bad. +1 buy, +$1. Like I'm just not impressed. This gets 4 out of 10 because it's a plus buy, and sometimes you need that. And like sometimes you're desperate for something, and sometimes that matters a lot. So 4 out of 10. Woo! I guess that's what my ratings mean. Way of the Mouse. Play the set aside card, leaving it there, but their setup says set aside an unused action costing 2 or 3. So Way of the Mouse can be, it's different like every game. And I think that's really cool. I think it's worth the extra setup, and I really like what Way of the Mouse brings to the game. On the other hand, evaluating it is like frickin' impossible, right? It's hard to evaluate. It's hard enough to evaluate these vanilla ways. But then, like, you have to be able to think about it on the fly and look at it every game, which is why card ratings in general are meaningless, right? Because you have to figure out what's good and what you need and, like, how to do stuff. So I gave this a 6 out of 10. I don't even know what that means. Basically, I gave it 5.5 and rounded it to the nearest. This is really cool, but I don't even know how to talk about it. Way of the Mule. +1 action, +$1. You can turn your terminal cards that you can't play into coppers. Not impressed, 3 out of 10. Way of the Otter. +2 cards, 6 out of 10. Drawing cards is really good, especially when like you can use it as a way. I think this is one of the stronger ones. Like you can build really reliable decks out of this. Just like over village yourself and like otter some stuff and like I mean this is like the golden age of what ways are. Like this is solid, like really good. You're going to use this one a lot. Way of the Owl. Draw until you have 6 cards in hand. So this one I actually do want to talk about a little bit. Draw to X decks have huge problems with reliability and stalling. A way that pushes draw to X decks is one of the best ways that I think could be needed. You really need to make sure you find a draw to X card when you need it. So something like that one card, the 5-cost village that let you draw up to like hostile. I don't know what any of these cards do. Watch me just like fumble over myself. Hunting Lodge, yeah, that guy. That guy's pretty good because you can spam those, but they cost 5. Way of the Owl is like another different form of reliability. I don't think it solves the fundamental problems that draw to X decks have. But I gave it a 5 out of 10 because like this has situations where it can be very, very good. And you can draw a lot of cards with this bad boy. I just don't think you can build a deck around it. I mean, you can build a deck maybe that can take advantage of it and let you high roll decently often. But I wouldn't say you're like building a deck around it. 5 out of 10, Way of the Owl. But I think this is pretty interesting. I'm glad that this way exists. Way of the Ox, +2 actions. This is a village. I'm giving it 7 out of 10. But like it's a village when you need villages, right? You just shove all the terminals in your deck. You're sad when you have 2 terminals that collide. But if you have 3, you're very happy. So shove terminals. Yeah, go for it, man. Terminals. I love terminals. Put them in my deck. Way of the Pig, +1 card, +1 action. It's like, remember all those times you're dreaming of when you can, like your opponent plays an Enchantress on you and you're happy about it? Well, now you can have that whenever you want. Way of the Pig. These pigs are adorable on the art. Neato, 5 out of 10. It's you want this. It's good for cards you don't use anymore. It's good for terminal collision. I think this is like the best terminal collision option in the ways. Yeah, there you go. Way of the Rat. You may discard a treasure to gain a copy of this. 8 out of 10. I think this is the most powerful way. Cards that you want a lot of and are hard to get. This is like one of the easiest ways you can get them because like it's a way. That's whatever card you want to spam. The downside of not playing it this turn is almost certainly less than just gain a frickin' copy of it and, like, don't spend a copper. Like, Way of the Rat is totally nuts. I think Way of the Rat is, like, super great. Way of the Seal. Plus $1. This turn, when you gain a card, you may put it onto your deck. Okay. I don't think this is great. 4 out of 10. Way of the Sheep. This is like the... It gives you plus $2, and I think that's actually pretty good. Sometimes you just want some money, man. It's like why Steward's good in some cases. Like, you can hit price points by just sheeping stuff, you know? You can buy cards that have other utility, and then, like, just sheep it when you want some money. So I think this is good. 6 out of 10. Way of the Squirrel. Plus 2 cards at the end of this turn. So it's at the end of the turn. It's like Expedition. It's not like duration draw. So it's vulnerable to Militia. So it's like straight up worse in most cases. Although with some of those reactions that really like to be played on your opponent's turn, you could... I think this is arguably better than Expedition, because you don't have to spend buys on it. You have to spend actions on it. That said, it's still just plus 2 cards at the end of the turn. Has a lot of weaknesses, and it's, you know, only plus 2 cards. But, like, hey, fine. 5 out of 10. Like, Way of the Squirrel. Not bad. Way of the Turtle. Set this aside. If you did, play it at the start of your next turn. Way of the Turtle is, like... I think this is so cool. Like, you know, a lot of that marginal benefit that you get from, like, Barge and Village Green. Like, oh, hey, if I don't need it now, I can do it next turn. Like, on deck control, that's one thing. And then on payload, it's a different thing. And then, like, on mixed cards, it's, like, also kind of cool. So, like, this can be a village. It can be, like, extra payload. It can be smoothing. It can be just so many things. It can even be, like, the threat of something. So, like, if I have an attack... and I don't think it's going to hit my opponent hard this turn, I can just turtle it. And now they know it's coming, right? And you know, the threat, you can expand, like, how many threats you can make. Way of the Turtle can just be so many things. And I think this is, like... I think this is a really solid effect. I gave it 7 out of 10. It's one of my favorite ways. And finally, Way of the Worm. Exile an estate from the supply. It's like getting a VP token, but you can't do it a whole bunch. Okay. I don't think this is very impressive. 4 out of 10. So yeah, that's my first impressions of Menagerie. I guess I did want to say this. I don't like that this set is called Menagerie, and I spoke out against it. And Donald X was like, I can do this. It doesn't matter that there's a card called Menagerie. I can call it Magic the Gathering, did it? And I'm like... And he sounded just like that, because I know what his voice sounds like. I actually do, but anyway. I don't buy that. I think it's really annoying. I constantly am, like, clarifying what I mean when I say Menagerie, and I think that's why you don't do this. But whatever. I mean, this is the reality. This is the world we live in, and the expansion is called Menagerie. I think Bestiary would have been fine. Donald X didn't do that because he thought people had dirty minds and it looked like bestiality, but he made a card called Wild Hunt, so... I don't know. In any case, I think Menagerie is a really cool set. I think there's a lot of really fun stuff in here. There's only a couple things that I find objectionable, like basically Sanctuary and Destrier, and whatever. Like, Sanctuary is probably not that bad. It's all deck control except for the buy, and so, like, I don't know, I can get over it. And Destrier it shouldn't come up that often. Like, I really think there's a lot of new stuff in this expansion. So, like, when Donald X says, like, oh, it's hard to come up with simple things that are interesting, like, you're doing it, man! Like, Renaissance and Menagerie is just jam-packed with this stuff, and it's so good. It's so good. Oh, I really like this set. And I'm excited to, like, actually play with some of these cards, because I haven't played with the current versions of them. It's like, this is really good stuff. In any case, thanks for listening to this mini-sode that apparently is like an hour and 43 minutes long. So mini is going to be in quotes on this mini-sode. Next time we're going to talk about the stuff I said before. Wear your seatbelt, wash your hands, don't cough on people, social distancing. Please don't kill people in a global pandemic by being irresponsible. Goodbye. I'm being told that Way of the Horse on Horse doesn't work. You still have to return it. And I don't know why I thought that it ever did. I don't even think there was an old version of Way of the Horse that did that. Like, there's no excuse. I'm just bad. Way of the Horse is worse now. There really aren't that many, like, busted synergies. It's just stuff you don't want anymore, I guess. I mean, I guess, so Necropolis stays in your deck, and Zombies and Black Market cards. Ooh, Way of the Horse Black Market. That actually could be pretty good, because you're basically always going to buy something from the Black Market, no matter how bad it is. That would be kind of cool, but... Huh. Sorry I'm bad.